Another day, another all-time high for Bitcoin. We just hit $123,000, but at the time of recording this video, we are back below 120K. In today's video, we'll be talking about the most recent Bitcoin price action. We'll also be going over Pump Fund's token launch and how we profited from this massively, as well as going over the most recent news in the industry. If you enjoy the content, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe. Let's jump right into the video. Quick video today, but as we can see, we got a massive wick on Bitcoin at the time of recording this video. We are now below $120,000. So what is next for Bitcoin? Because this is massive. We pumped well past $120,000, above 123K. Now, in yesterday's video, I talked about how there was still a likelihood we could go ahead and pump past 120K, but I was expecting some kind of correction. Now, the question is, how much further down can we go? Because we've been seeing now that if we zoom out, every single dip does go ahead and get bought up, and then we pump massively. Now, on the 4-hour chart here, this is a little bit of a more significant correction that I want you to pay attention to, because we do have some CME gaps down below, and it would be perfectly healthy if we were to go ahead and tap into these gaps. Now, what are the gaps that I'm looking at here? First of all, we do have the gap right below 115.7K in between 114.3K. So if Bitcoin were to find its way back here after printing a massive wick on today's candle, would you really be that surprised? Now, as I've been saying, every single dip has been getting bought up. So for a potential opportunity here, if we were to come back down, perhaps you'd be looking for a long setup. Now, I have not executed on any Bitcoin long quite yet because I was more focused on the Pump Fund token. So for their launch, they ended up raising around $600 million across all exchanges and across their private sales. So how did I play this? Well, you'll notice that a few videos ago, we talked about how we would likely pump and then see a massive retracement afterwards. I was personally more interested in the short, but a lot of our community members took this information and made profits in both directions. So let me just show you here in my Telegram. First of all, we had Daniel here who longed the Pump Fund token and made a 100% gain. Then in my VIP group, we basically talked about shorting the token and we got more massive profits to the downside. This is the beauty of the crypto market. You can get in and out of trades and make significant profits as much as 100, 200% on the way up and also around 100% on the way down. Now, ultimately, I do think that this token can go ahead and move lower, as we've seen with several launches, and I kind of built my reputation on shorting these new launches. So far, our win rate is 19 out of 21 new token launches, which we went ahead and shorted over the course of this cycle and made some significant profits. I also have a video where I went over the specifics as to how I use this strategy to make some profits in this market. And if you want to watch that, I'll make sure to link it in the description down below. But anyways, our free community has been printing, and if you want to join, you have the first link in my description down below. I share some of my life, I share some trades, and I also give you access to our free signals group if that's something you'd like to join. So let's get back to the Bitcoin charts. You can see that we're getting a little bit of a retracement here. Now, ultimately for my spot position, I'm still very happy sitting in spot Bitcoin. Now, the thing I want you to pay attention to is Bitcoin dominance. We talked about this at length in yesterday's video. Some of you were saying we're going to get an altcoin season. It's imminent. But let me just show you what a proper altcoin season actually looks like. It would be something like this dump in Bitcoin dominance. We've been over it time and time again. The reason I have to keep reiterating this is because I've been sitting comfy in Bitcoin for quite some time, and I still don't think that the highest risk-adjusted returns are in altcoins. There will always be altcoins that outperform Bitcoin for a small period of time, but over the longer term, I still think that Bitcoin will be determining the rest of the crypto market. That means that if right now Bitcoin decides to dump into that CME gap, which is only around $115,000, then we would be seeing alts completely capitulate once again. However, if Bitcoin pumps, of course, it will drag the rest of the altcoin market with it, with a couple of select altcoins to outperform Bitcoin. But right now, I'm still leaning more heavy Bitcoin, and I will let you know as soon as I pivot into altcoins. I really don't feel the need to enter any kind of altcoins with my Bitcoin stack in particular when Bitcoin dominance continues to look like this and monetary policy is still the same. This is the altcoin season that we're looking for. Now, outside of Bitcoin dominance, what you want to look at for a strong altcoin season is also Ethereum continuously outperforming Bitcoin. So we've covered this chart at length as well, but you can see that on the daily time frame, if I zoom in here, we are actually sitting right above the bull market support band, If we can hold this level as support, as I've said many times, and ETH Bitcoin really does go ahead and spring off of these levels, then at that point, I do think that altcoins could see some more light and outperform Bitcoin. But ultimately, I don't think that this is the environment where you want to be super heavy into altcoins. I will keep reiterating this because of my comfy Bitcoin position. However, I can understand the allure for people that don't have a Bitcoin position to jump into altcoins to try to chase those fast gains. If you're not able to swap in and out of altcoins fast and really look at the shorter time frames, then I would still say that Bitcoin gives you the best risk-adjusted returns. Now, if we're talking about holding altcoins for a matter of weeks to a matter of months, I'm hoping that we get that opportunity in this cycle, and I will let you know as soon as I pivot my strategy. But right now, as a long-term investment, I am still holding my Bitcoin and still sitting in there comfortably. So, let's see, can ETH against Bitcoin really pop off here and hold the bull market support band as support? Because if I zoom out once again on the weekly time frame, you can see that every single time over the past few years that we tapped into the bull market support band or even broke right above it, we came right back down. And I'll zoom out even more. As you can see, every single time, without fail, we came back down. Now, the thing that we have going for us, as I said in yesterday's video, is of course the 2019 support level, which we did clearly hold as support on this chart. Now, can we come back down? Of course, I think that this is actually more likely than not, but if we could form a potential double bottom here, maybe at that point we'll get the strength we need to really push above the bull market support band, hold it as support, and then move on much higher. But right now, as I'm recording this video, we cannot ignore the fact that we are actually above this level. The other chart that we've been looking at length on the channel is, of course, the total crypto market cap versus Bitcoin. And of course, I do think that we will be coming back down to these levels. We do get pumps, don't get me wrong, but they ultimately end up rolling over. And if I zoom in here on the weekly chart to take a closer look, right now you can see that we got a wick to the upside last week with that massive Bitcoin pump, and the altcoin market actually outperformed Bitcoin ever so slightly. However, we ultimately do look like we want to move a little bit lower. So what's going to happen here? Is this going to just trickle on and take a while for it to actually occur where we hit the bottom, and I will determine at that point that we have the highest risk-adjusted returns in altcoins? Or is this finally just going to capitulate to the bottom of this range? I could be wrong, of course. Maybe we go ahead and just pump past here. But right now, as I've said, the trend is still very clear, and the trend is indeed your friend. So let's take a look at the liquidity maps, because we can see that there's also a ton of liquidity on this 24-hour chart right below $119,000, 118K. And if I zoom out a little bit further on the 1 week chart, most of the liquidity here is indeed to the downside. So you need to be careful because yes, Bitcoin ripped up very aggressively, very happy with the spot position. However, we do know that we get 15 to 30% corrections in bull markets. That would probably be an absolute gift at this point. I'm not saying we will get that, but you cannot ignore the fact that most people in this market are still very much long, as you can see by the Bitcoin exchange liquidation map, which we've covered on the channel at length. The left, all of the longs in the market, so much cumulative long liquidation leverage sitting around 17.6 billion, and on the right here, only about $3 billion worth of cumulative short liquidation leverage. So let's see how this develops. As I said, I think we could be tapping into the CME gap sooner rather than later, but ultimately be careful with your positions. And as I said, in terms of my spot position, I am still mainly heavy in Bitcoin, and I will guide you through exactly what I'm doing. And just some quick news before we wrap up this video. BlackRock Spot ETF is now the company's most profitable ETF, Bloomberg reports.
Let's hone in on the Bitcoin and Ether for a minute here. And since the rally has been all the news today, it's showing in the flows. I think the ETFs have been part of the rally. If you look, this shows the spot Bitcoin ETFs, and here's the spot Ether. So Ether's smaller, but definitely it's trending up. But look at the Bitcoin ETFs. They've taken in $50 billion since they came out. So they came out in January. They had 28 because GBTC was a conversion. Now all the way up there, $155 billion in assets. IBIT more than half. Now the 20th biggest ETF overall, 7th biggest for BlackRock, and most profitable for BlackRock. So 300% return since the ETF was filed 2 years ago, Scarlett, and boom, what an explosion of growth.
Absolutely insane, and you can see that the spot ETFs over the past few days had over $1 billion in inflows alone. So this is absolutely crazy. Now, this is also why I hold the majority of my spot position in Bitcoin, because if you take a look at these smart institutional investors, they just keep on piling into Bitcoin. There will be a moment, as I say, that altcoins will probably outperform Bitcoin, but for now, I am sleeping stress-free at night, holding my Bitcoin as it continues to go up and also trading the market on the side. By the way, if you want to know how I trade, you have the first link in my description down below, which brings you directly to my free groups. And that sums up today's very quick video. Bitcoin continues to soar higher. We made it above $123,000. However, at the time of recording, we are now back below 120K, perhaps liquidating a lot of those aggressive late longs. Now, will we find our way back down to the CME gap? I do think at some point this is highly likely, and it wouldn't even be that much of a correction considering how much Bitcoin pumped over the past few days and last week. If you enjoyed the content, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe, and I'll see you in tomorrow's video.